Well, this past week, we've seen footage of Haitian refugees being turned away on the U.S. border. Reckoning of U.S. foreign policy in Afghanistan is not going away. The Arlington National Cemetery writes on its website that they do not anticipate holding another event like this in our lifetimes. A once-in-a-100-year opportunity to approach the tomb and honor the unknown soldiers. From Arlington, Virginia, I'm Zhihan Jiang, Medill News Service. But not all AAPRs are okay, especially when it comes to abortion. According to the Center for Migration Studies, 1 out of 7 Asian Americans are undocumented immigrants.
What's going on with finding a permanent chief?
Chief Editon told me that this decision will hinge on the upcoming election of the city manager, who is likely to pick a police chief in line with what they want to achieve. Elizabeth? Do you think what the judge said to you is related to the fact that you are an AAPI woman?
I truly think so, because she also commented on how well I was doing at school.
2 hours each time, 3 times every week. Dragon boat rowers train before starting their day jobs. They call themselves serious amateur players. We're now at the last stop of the day, Wangshi Garden. But different from your usual tourist experience in the daytime, we're taking a night tour here. We're immersing in the lives of Chinese ancestors with a cup of tea and the Kunqu Opera. Hi everyone, it's Tuesday, November 9th. I'm Zhihan Jiang. You're watching Medill Today. Well, this past week, we've seen footage of Haitian refugees being turned away on the U.S. border. Reckoning of U.S. foreign policy in Afghanistan is not going away. Today on Capitol Hill, Pentagon officials testified and responded to questions on Afghanistan evacuation. 28 days from the chaotic withdrawal in Afghanistan and 45 days from the Taliban force taking over the country, Congress members pressed today for answers on how the evacuation went wrong.
We wanted to be ready, and we were.
Secretary of Defense Austin laid out that as early as spring, the Pentagon had been preparing for a non-combatant evacuation. Yet a month later,
The fact that the Afghan army that we and our partners trained simply melted away, in many cases without firing a shot, took us all by surprise.
General Milley says if Afghan army stayed to fight,
they would have probably lost significant chunks of territory, but Kabul would be there and some of the major provincial capitals.
General Milley, in his opening remark, responded to the recent revelation in Bob Woodward's new book, Peril, about holding backdoor call with China during Trump's administration.
My message again was consistent. Stay calm, steady, and de-escalate. We are not going to attack you.
In the 3-page memo submitted to the Senate Armed Services Committee, Milley detailed how he consulted with Nancy Pelosi before the call and Joint Chief of Staff after the call. Going forward, Milley warned that Taliban with ties to al-Qaeda continues to be a terrorist threat.
A reconstituted al-Qaeda or ISIS with aspirations to attack the United States is a very real possibility.
Secretary Austin and both generals gave no direct response to questions such as how many American citizens remain in Afghanistan and who takes the overall responsibility for the evacuation. The committee will reconvene on Thursday, and Secretary Austin will testify again tomorrow in the House. From Capitol Hill, Zhihan Jiang, Medill News Service. Moments of silence, bouquets in hands. For the first time since 1948, the public laid flowers for the soldiers known but to God. The simple gesture strikes a chord for Daniel Grubbs, a Vietnam veteran now living in Frederick County.
I was choked up, had to have a moment of silence to compose myself after we laid the flowers.
The tomb of the unknown soldier provides a final resting place for 3 unknown American service members from World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. The first from World War I was buried exactly 100 years ago. In the middle lies an empty crypt dedicated to all missing soldiers from the Vietnam War.
This is actually on the plaza where they're burying the unknown, and this is me right here.
Bigler helped with burying the Vietnam unknown soldier in 1984. The soldier's body was removed after being identified 20 years later.
You become very aware of death and the shortness of life.
Now 69, Bigler spent most of his life writing about the history of Arlington National Cemetery.
Each headstone represents a story waiting to be told, a past to be remembered.
According to the cemetery, around 400,000 veterans and their dependents are buried here. Service members at every major combat, from the Revolutionary War to modern conflicts, now lie in peace with honor.
When she sees all of the tombstones and the grave markers, and she says, wow, there's so many. And she's so right, there's so many. There are just so many service members that we can never repay for their sacrifices.
The Arlington National Cemetery writes on its website that they do not anticipate holding another event like this in our lifetimes. A once-in-a-100-year opportunity to approach the tomb and honor the unknown soldiers. From Arlington, Virginia, I'm Zhihan Jiang, Medill News Service. Hundreds protesting down Sheridan Road demanded defunding the police after the killing of 20-year-old Dante Wright. That was April 2021. Protest organizer Evanston Fight for Black Lives, who did not respond to NNN's interview request, paused their defunding work in September. They said, quote, "It is frustrating that we haven't been seeing as much community engagement in our work and events this summer." Former Police Chief Demetrius Cook in 2020 asked Northwestern Neighborhood and Network Initiative, or N3, that examines public safety, to draft a policy review of EPD's use of force. The review made 9 recommendations, including requiring use of force as a last resort.
We delivered the report, we presented it to City Council, and as far as I know, nothing's been done with it. So we never heard back from Chief Cook.
EPD hasn't had a permanent chief since Cook retired last June. The new interim chief, Richard Eddington, says EPD has a culture of being responsible about use of force. He served as chief from 2007 to 2018.
Many of the things that we do about use of force were done when I was here. They were enhanced by Chief Cook, and we will continue to maintain those enhancements.
EPD in 2021 reported 1 fatal use of force and 1 inappropriate use of force, while 35% of uses are still under review.
The correct number of inappropriate use of force cases should be 0, right? So anything that's not 0 is too many.
Chief Eddington says he's talking to research teams like N3 and Chicago's crime lab to further review use of force.
Contact with those individuals is critical, and even the groups that want to defund the police come to a mutual understanding.
Communities shattered by violence in the past say they're looking for imminent changes.
I want to wait for video footage to make us to reconsider it.
Hannah joins us live. You've spoken to an Evanstonian who's concerned about Chief Eddington's return. Could you tell us a little more?
Yes, Elizabeth, a local organization that reviews Evanston's police misconduct has been protesting Chief Eddington's rehire. They said during his last term of office, minority Evanstonians faced police abuses and rarely had their concerns addressed. One minority called it, quote, "a slap in the face."